Hello, everyone. I am Matt Williamson. Let's talk AFC playoff picture, which is insane right now. Now, I'm sure a lot of you, and hey, I get it, are saying, Matt, don't waste your time. We're here to talk Steelers. They're not going to the playoffs. They're terrible. They're going to lose out. They should tank. They should try to get the best draft pick. They should trade their coach, cut their coach, fire their coach, whatever. Hey, I'm not even saying you're 100% wrong. I don't think they're good, but they're in the playoffs as we speak right now on December 11th. And this league is bonkers. And this team, as much as any, could get better. Now, I'm not going to address, right now, should they get rid of their coach, all those things. You got 4 games to play. They're going to play their best. They have a little bit of a long week here to lick their wounds, maybe figure some things out. Keep an eye out for my article. I have 3 or 4 suggestions of things they should implement going forward here, over this break. So I'm sure you know this at this point, but the Steelers have... here we go. At Indy this week, Saturday. Then you get a little bit longer of a break, too. Cincy at home, at Seattle, at Baltimore. Now, I will certainly concede or admit or whatever that if any of those games were played today, the Steelers should be an underdog. At Indy, Cincy here, at Seattle. They're struggling, but at Baltimore. None of those games right this second should the Steelers be favored. But they have massive playoff implications starting with this Colts game, because right now both those teams are in the playoffs. So we'll get back to the Steelers here in a minute, but I just want to, this is insane to me. I mean, there are 6 teams out of 16 in the AFC that are 7-6. Now, the Patriots... ironically enough, have just been eliminated. They have no chance at 3-10. The Titans are right behind them at 4-8. I'm sure they'll get eliminated this week, whatever. Jets at 5-8, Raiders at 5-8, Chargers at 5-8. Maybe. I just don't see it, especially Vegas. They've really gone backwards. I don't think all of a sudden the Jets have found their quarterback in Wilson, although he played very well. I think the Chargers could get fired by the time you listen to this, possibly. So those guys are basically out of it because there's no 6 wins team. So all those teams we just mentioned are 5 or lower. The 6, 7-6 teams are your Steelers, the Colts, the Bills, the Bengals, Denver, Houston. So it's 6 right there. We'll get to them last. Let's start at the top of the AFC now, though. Now, the Ravens, well, first of all, I'm recording this Monday afternoon, so Miami hasn't yet played this week. There are 2 games tonight. I don't know why, but there's 2 games tonight. So we will adjust this accordingly going forward. But the Ravens are 10-3 after a really nice win against the Rams, a really well-played game. I think, subject to change, but I think the Ravens are the best team in the conference. And clearly they are sitting in the best shape. That's undeniable. I mean, I guess Miami could win tonight and they'd also be 10-3. But going forward, this is what the Ravens have. The Ravens go to Jacksonville next week. Not easy. I assume they'll be favored slightly on the road there. At San Fran, they will not be favored. Miami at home, Steelers at home. So to bring us back to the Steelers, the chances of Baltimore resting their starters in Week 18 seems pretty slim and none. Like, I don't think they're going to run away with the AFC with that 4-game stretch, which is really tough. But they are in the driver's seat. I think they're the best team in the conference. Miami, they have Tennessee at home tonight, the Jets at home tonight, Dallas at home. So they have a 3-game home stretch here. Dallas, but their last 3 games are Dallas at home, at Baltimore, Bills at home. So they're far from out of the woods. I mean, I think both these teams are going to the playoffs, but I see some speed bumps for both of the 2 teams in the driver's seat without question. Talk about Kansas City. They're 8-5, and the beauty of where they're sitting too is no one in that division is probably going to catch them, but Denver's only one game behind them, so I guess that's noteworthy. Kansas City's struggling a little by their standards, just lost a really close one. They have a tiebreak over Jacksonville, who's in at 4, based on head-to-head win percentage. So your division leaders are Baltimore, Miami, Kansas City, Jacksonville. I don't want to say it's safe because, boy, I made some presumptuous statements earlier in the year, but I think there's a strong chance that those 4 teams end up winning their respective divisions in the AFC. Baltimore, Miami, Kansas City, Jacksonville. Kansas City ain't what they used to be, but they got a little bit embarrassed on Monday night, and I've never seen Mahomes act that way. I wonder if the NFL just poked the bear a little bit, and he's going to go from playing really well this year to Superman. So keep an eye on that. Side note, Pat Mahomes, despite all his success, has never played an away playoff game. So that might actually happen for the first time. Maybe not. I mean, they'll probably win the division, and maybe somebody knocks off the teams ahead of them, and they never do. But crazy. I mean, that's how successful he's been. I mean, a down year for Mahomes is losing the AFC Championship game at home. That's a bad year for him in his career. That's insanity. So don't sleep on them, but they have issues. Jacksonville has issues too, but especially on defense. I give Lawrence a lot of credit for playing like he did yesterday, despite far from being 100%. So those 4 teams are in good shape. I'm sure they'll all end up in the playoffs. I think they'll all win their division. Kansas City's remaining schedule at New England, Vegas, Cincy, at the Chargers, who I'm sure are going to be cashing it in by then. So Kansas City's in real nice shape. I didn't realize how nice that sets up for them. As mentioned before, Baltimore goes to Jacksonville, and then Jacksonville goes to Tampa, host Carolina, at Tennessee. I should have looked at that ahead of time, but man, Jacksonville and KC are really in nice shape in terms of who they're playing next. All right, I'll be back in a minute. We'll talk about this insane wild card. I'll try to just lay it out for you. I'm not going to predict anything. As it stands today, December 11th, your wild card teams are the Browns at 8-5, and I know we hate the Browns, yada yada, but I root for Joe Flacco. I helped recruit him to Pitt way back when. He's been by far their best quarterback this year, which isn't a huge bar to get over, including Watson, but he's played really well now for 2 weeks in a row. Let's see if he can do it for another month or whatever. But they're 8-5 in the driver's seat in the wild card role, and conceivably could catch Baltimore. I mean, considering Baltimore's tough schedule, but they're 2 games behind. Cleveland finishes out the season against the Bears, far from a pushover. At Houston, which looks a lot better now. Hosting the Jets, which looks a little tougher. And then at the Bengals, which looks a lot tougher. So I don't see a sweep. I don't see 4-0. I don't see 0-4. They'll probably win 2 or 3 of them. And they look like a playoff team to me. But wouldn't it have been nice if the Steelers could have won one of these 2 crap-ass games, and they would be sitting there with the Browns at 8-5 and not one of the 6 at 7-6, with teams like the Bengals and Bills, who I left for dead, now right in the mix? So as it stands now, we talked about the 4 division leaders, and the Browns are really comfy. But your Steelers are 6, and the upcoming Colts are 7. So playoffs start today. Steelers are going to, what would that be? The Ravens would get a bye. Miami would host the Colts. You would go to Kansas City. What could go wrong? But the Steelers win tie breaks over Indianapolis based on best win percentage in common games. Wins a tie break over, and I'm sure that would change if they lose to the Colts, of course. Wins a tiebreak over Buffalo and Denver based on best win percentage in conference games. So it gets convoluted. I'm not going to talk tiebreakers. I don't even pretend to know tiebreakers. But your Steelers are sitting at 6 right now. And if they could resurrect their season, and we've all seen stranger things happen with this team. It's not impossible. It looks unlikely. It looks murky. It looks bleak. But there you have it. I told you their schedule. The Colts, who, if you're in this top 7, you control your own fate, not destiny. You can't control destiny. The Colts host the Steelers, go to Atlanta, Vegas, and Houston at home. That works out pretty nice for them, especially considering where Houston's at right now with their injuries. Indy, if they can beat the Steelers, I really like their chance to stay in the playoff race. Now, Houston is next. They are the 8 seed. But Stroud's in concussion protocol. Their top 2 receivers are out. And it's a wonderful story, but I tend to think the story is over. The storybook ending might be over for the Texans. They go to Tennessee, though. They'll be favored there. Host the Browns. Tennessee again at Indy. So it looks pretty good for them. Maybe Stroud can get back in for this upcoming game, but they're a little banged up. They're really banged up. The Bengals are next. The Denver's next at 9. I like how they're playing. They're physical, well coached. You know, they've come a long way after, the trade deadline. We thought they were going to be a trade everyone, tank, try to get the first overall pick. But they go to the Lions next week, host New England, host the Chargers at Vegas. It's a pretty easy path. It's a lot easier than the Steelers. All these teams, Indy, have much easier paths than the Steelers. At Detroit doesn't look great, but hosting the Pats, Chargers, and then going to Vegas, Denver could win 3 out of 4, which would get you to 10. Cincy's also 7-6. They're the 10 seed. And I'll tell you what, their quarterback has played much better the last 2 weeks than against Pittsburgh. He's just accurate. I mean, he's completing passes. He's not wowing you, but he's putting the football where it needs to be. I think they've probably found a long-term backup, which is valuable. They host Minnesota, who's a disaster right now. They come here. Then they got to go to KC in week 17. Browns then go to Cincy. Not crazy. I mean, beat the Vikes, beat the Steelers, lose in KC, beat the Browns. Maybe you get in. The Bills. Now, people give me, I don't want to say a hard time. Probably the opposite. I've kind of enjoyed this sentiment. But for 3 weeks now, I've been saying, I think the Bills can win the Super Bowl. I don't know if they can get in the playoffs. Because right now, they're the 11 seed. They're the least tiebreaker-ish of all these 7-6 teams. But I think they're the one that can win the Super Bowl out of the group. Josh Allen is a superstar and is playing like it. Their defense worries me a little bit, but they just won in Kansas City. They got over the majority of their brutal stretch because they went to Philly 2 weeks ago. The bye in week 13, I think, really helped the Bills. But I don't know if they can afford to lose another, considering that tiebreakers don't work in their favor. They're the last seed of all these 7-6s. And Dallas goes to Buffalo next week. Brutal. But could Dallas be in a letdown situation after a really convincing win over their biggest rival in Philly? Maybe. It's in Buffalo. Then you go to the Chargers. Huge favorite there. You host New England. Huge favorite there. At Miami in week 18. Like, as a fan, Steelers aside, I want the Steelers to go to the playoffs. I think it's good for the team, even if it's a one-and-done situation, as opposed to getting a 5 draft picks better or whatever. But we'll talk about that stuff when the time comes. But as a fan, I want to see the Bills. I mean, the Bills to me are entertaining and a good football team. They could get in, but they are going to have to be on fire. But they can. I mean, of these teams, Steelers, Colts, Texans, Broncos, Bengals, Bills, if we're just talking about who's playing who on a neutral field, I think the Bills are the biggest favorites of all. I mean, I don't think they'd be a dog against any of those teams. And what would Steelers at Bills line be right now? 10? 12? Steelers in Pittsburgh. Bills by 6.5? 8? I don't know. I'm just guessing. But they're the best team of the group, or the most dangerous team of the group. But some of these teams don't have bad paths. Indy and Denver really come to mind. So it's going to be really tough for the Steelers. None of it's going to matter if you play like you have the last 2 weeks. I mean, obviously, I don't think I'm breaking news there. So that's a wrap. It was kind of a strange week. It's been a while since they played. Just start digging into the Colts. They're an interesting team. Maybe we'll start talking about them Wednesday-ish or so. So I just wanted to kind of take a step back and just look at the AFC. And there you have it. It's going to be tough. Over and out.